Thanks to Dashlane for sponsoring this video. Hey kids, whether you're a precocious young lad down by the swimming hole or a grizzled crime scene investigator, everybody's got some interest in dead bodies. Yes, from Weekend at Bernie's to Weekend at Bernie's 2 to Weekend at Bernie's 3 Revelations, stories about wayward corpses have certainly carved their niche in today's media. So, I thought I'd spin a few yarns about some real-life people who were kept out far past their expiration date. Our first tale follows one Elmer McCurdy. He was an outlaw during the twilight days of the Wild West. Thanks to his former life as a miner, McCurdy acted as the demolitions expert to his little posse, using nitroglycerin basically anytime he had the faintest excuse to do so. Except he was kind of a moron, so it didn't usually go quite as planned. Gotta say, after peanut butter and chocolate, my favorite combination of two things is probably gross incompetence and high explosives. Example, in March of 1911, McCurdy's band of rabble-rousers found out that $4,000 were in a safe in an approaching train. They managed to stop the entire locomotive, I don't even know how you do that, break in, hold everyone on board hostage, and locate the safe. McCurdy steps up to plate, right? Gotta blast the thing open, except I guess the excitement kinda got to him, because he ended up using like way too much nitroglycerin, like inordinate amounts. Ended up completely destroying the safe and its contents, and what few silver coins they made out with were literally melted to the frame of the safe and had to be peeled off. Anyway, he died in a shootout with police later that year, and the undertaker at the funeral home he was sent to couldn't find any next of kin on account of McCurdy being a rambling low-life varmint. So he just embalmed the hell out of him and said, "Hey boys and girls, want to see a dead criminal? Only one shiny nickel." And since LiveLeak wasn't around at the time, there weren't many places a kid could go to stare at a corpse for a while if he or she so desired. So it actually became a pretty popular attraction. Visitors would pay their dues by physically slipping the coin into the man's mouth, and the creepy ass undertaker would come fish him out later, probably with bare hands all slowly and sensual-like. A few years passed when a couple of guys showed up claiming to be McCurdy's brothers with a note from the local sheriff to back it up. They told the undertaker they had permission to go bury McCurdy, so he reluctantly relinquished the body to the men. Except, these guys weren't his brothers. They were just a couple of crusty freaking carnies. They shipped the body off to Kansas to become an attraction in a traveling show. From here, McCurdy traded hands a few more times. At one point, he was exploited for this one guy's film about narcotics. It was like, yeah, this pill-popping degenerate got shot while trying to rob a pharmacy for more dope the other day. The body was super old by then, so people were like, wait, why is he all desiccated and flaky and gross? He just goes, yep, that's what happens when you do drugs, kids. Your fucking skin falls off. Stay above the influence. At some point in his journey, he ended up getting coated in wax and paint to look a little less rotty, before ending up in a warehouse in 1949. Here's the thing, he was in there alongside some actual wax figures, and after spending 19 years in storage, nobody knew he was a real corpse anymore, so he ended up getting sold in 1968 as a mannequin to one Spoonie Singh, owner of the Hollywood Wax Museum. He tried to lend the guy out a couple times during his stay, but people found him too gross or unrealistic looking for whatever purposes they had in mind. So he ended up getting sold again and used as a prop of a hanged man at the Pike Amusement Zone in their Funhouse ride, with zero knowledge that he was an actual dead criminal. It wasn't until 1976, 65 years after his death, that an episode of The $6 Million Man was being filmed at the complex, and a stagehand tried to move the prop around only to have its arm break off in his hand. He was like, ugh, lousy stiff. Wait a minute, that's curious. This mannequin's got human flesh and bones inside of it. Wait a minute. Uh-oh. 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 The autopsy confirmed what everyone present at the time suspected. By this point, the body was so dried out and stale that it only weighed 50 pounds, which makes me think we should start a radical new fad diet where we just get people to mummify parts of their body. Like, Jenny, guess what? I just lost 30 pounds in 5 days. Wow, holy heck, how'd you do that? They call it the Egyptian cleanse. Anyway, with that, McCurdy was finally laid to rest back in his homeland of Oklahoma, and that film crew's lives were never the same again. Flashback to late 18th century.
Baloney.
There lived a physician by the name of Luigi Galvani. This guy was a big deal. He's the dude who discovered that, hey, animals got electricity in them. And his legacy still survives today in words like galvanize. One of his most famous experiments was the one where he used static electricity to make frog legs twitch on command. Around these parts, we call that the French salute. Stereotypes funny. Well, in 1803, his nephew, Giovanni Aldini, said, hey, that's pretty nifty and all, but what if we tried it on people? So the city of London was like, hey, now you're thinking with portals. One freshly executed criminal coming up. Aldini gathered a crowd and applied 2 diodes to the corpse's head, causing his face to scrunch up and one eye to flick open. Aldini was a showman though, he wanted some real action, so he then put the current through opposite points in the body, which made the whole thing flail around like Pinocchio in heat. Now today we know he was just exciting the dead muscles, right? But the people who were watching had no idea what was going on, so they were like, Jesus Christ, this guy's a fucking necromancer. Quick, go get grandma, maybe we can get in the will after all. Fun fact, this experiment actually ended up serving as inspiration for Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, which makes me wonder what other famous novels were based on real life events. Was a white whale ever pursued by a vengeful sea captain? Was there actually a mentally handicapped migrant worker who liked hugging rabbits to death? Was there ever a human soul as profoundly asinine and willfully ignorant as Amelia Bedelia? God, I hate her glassy-eyed face so fucking much. I just want to mash it into a running waffle maker, be like, ha, isn't that ironic? Grab her by her vacant fucking head, throw her out of a 747 and say, hey, why didn't you shoot yourself when you had the chance? Get it! Anyway, one thing we learned today is the importance of reputability. And just as you wouldn't want some dirty carnies jacking your stiff, phrasing, you certainly wouldn't want the same fate to befall your valuable online information. That's why you need to try Dashlane. Dashlane's been all over the place recently, and with good reason. In this day and age, cybersecurity and privacy have never been more important, and only a select few people have the time, energy, and know-how to keep their data as safe as humanly possible. What Dashlane does is, it takes all your passwords and autofill data across all your devices and uses the power of encryption to keep them out of the hands of lowly hackers. PC, Mac, iOS, Android, Chrome, Safari, Firefox, doesn't matter, Dashlane's got your back. Something especially cool about it is that you can automatically change your passwords right in Dashlane, without fiddling with stupid security questions from 6 years ago you don't know the answer to for an hour. Dashlane Premium even comes with a VPN, so now you can take full advantage of unsecured Wi-Fi without ever worrying that the janitor in the back of Starbucks knows about those horrific purchases you're making. So please, go to dashlane.com/salmonella to try Dashlane Premium free for 30 days. Also, the first 200 people who use the promo code Salmonella will get 10% off their Dashlane Premium subscription. By the way, this video ended up being way too long, so stay tuned for part 2 in a week or two. Anyway, that's all for today. Till next time, I'm Salmonella, and thank you for watching. Throw her out of a 747 and say, hey, why didn't you shoot yourself when you had the chance? Get it! Anyway, this video is sponsored by Dashlane. Hey kids, time to talk about more cases of stiff lifting from the days of yore. If you haven't seen part 1 yet, go check it out. Or don't. I'm a YouTuber, not a cop, unfortunately. This first tale doesn't feature an entire dead body, but I still found it interesting enough to talk about. So one day in 2012, a priest was riding a train out of Italy when his bag got stolen by a trio of thieves. Inside the bag was whatever normal personal possessions the guy happened to own, as well as a small vial containing the blood of none other than Pope John Paul II. So this begs the question, why did the priest have Pope blood in his bag? Well, an important way that the Catholic Church honors saints and other venerated individuals is the keeping of relics. These relics are ranked in terms of how close they were to the person at hand. You got something that's tangentially related to a saint in any way, that's a third-class relic. If it's a personal possession of a saint, it's second class. And as for first-class relics, those typically consist of literal body parts and or fluids of a holy figure. Now for you youngsters out there, in 1981, the Pope got shot 4 times by some fascist having a bad day. People are like, holy shit, it's a popicide! Is that even a word? No, I'm okay. Oh. Say, who left all this first-class relic lying around? So to this day, there remain 3 objects containing the fine-aged popey juice spilled that fateful afternoon. The vial was found a few hours later by police among the reeds and grass near the station, which basically means the thieves took one look at it and were like, blood? I already make this myself. Lame, and tossed it out without a second thought. Here's the thing though, that's not the only instance of old JP2 getting blood napped. In 2014, a similar relic was yoinked from the church of San Pietro della Ienca in Italy alongside a crucifix. The fact that these were the only items taken led to 2 prevailing theories. Some people thought that, since John Paul II wasn't technically a saint yet, the relic's value would go way up once the man was actually canonized, so the thieves decided to take it now and resell it later. The other theory was was way more popular with the media. After all, what use does Pope blood have other than satanic rituals? This story naturally got a lot of press, and the whole world just kind of assumed that Lucifer himself was set to return any day now. Eventually, the thieves confessed, so authorities came to the rehab facility they were staying at. They returned the cross, but when questioned about the relic, they were like, wait, what? Pope blood? Satan? Do you guys need to check in here too? Eventually, it was found in a rubbish bin on the facility grounds, which means once again, it was just casually tossed out as nonsense. You ever throw out Pope blood? Because apparently, multiple people have done that on separate occasions just in the past 7 years. It doesn't end there, of course. In 2016, this happened a third time when a piece of cloth with John Paul fluid on it was taken from Cologne Cathedral. I can't for the life of me find a follow-up to this story, which leads me to believe that they're just like, fuck it, Pope blood's more trouble than it's worth at this point. But if you guys can find some conclusion to where it ended up, let me know below. Now, our next story begins with a man named Karl Tanzler, a German-born radiology technologist in early 20th century Florida. He looked kind of like Sigmund Freud, except even more evil looking. On the inside, he was a pretty normal dude, other than the fact that he claimed to have visions throughout his life of some mysterious dark-haired girl. Anyway, in 1930, while working at the Marine Hospital in Key West, he met a young woman by the name of Maria Elena Milagro de Hoyos, called Elena for short, and he said, "Oh my god, that's the girl from the visions I've been having." Yeah, wait, what? "We were meant to meet today. We must be soulmates." What? Don't you have like a wife and 2 kids? Destiny. Hoyos was soon diagnosed with tuberculosis, which was considered fatal at the time, so naturally, Karl decided to handle her treatment, going as far as convincing her family to let him visit their home every day. Except, he was a radiologist, so even if there were reliable means to treat tuberculosis at the time, he definitely didn't have the credentials to do so, but whatever. This is the past we're talking about, after all. That place was a shit show from start to finish. I'm not about to get on somebody's case for a little clerical error. In addition to whatever salves and tinctures and such doctors gave to people back then, Tanzler showered her with gifts of clothes and jewelry. I know he meant well, but if I was bedridden with a terminal illness, I'd just be insulted. Like, wow, thanks, can't wait to show off this little number out on the town. Anyway, eventually, Tanzler found that the time had come to reveal his true feelings. "Elena, there's something I must confess. I'm deeply in love with you." "I'm so glad you feel the same." Hoyos inevitably succumbed to the disease, leaving Tanzler heartbroken. He just wasn't ready to part ways with his pestilence-riddled sweetheart, so he asked the family's permission to commission an above-ground mausoleum for their daughter. And since this was the early 20th century, they said, "What a sweet, selfless man. I'm sure he'd never do this just so he could commit crimes against nature." Then he was like, "Oh yeah, by the way, could I have some of her hair too?" "Sure, kind stranger. Here's a bag of her hair we just had lying around for some fucking reason." Again, no red flags here. He went to visit her dwelling nearly every night for 2 years. Then finally one day he said, "You know what, kid? You're alright. Say, how's about we ditch this musty old mausoleum and go back to my place?" I'll take that as a yes. So he took her home in a little red toy wagon, which is ridiculous. It makes me picture him skipping around, whistling a merry tune. "Hey neighbor!" Now here's a riddle for all you intellectuals out there. What do a dead body and a used PT Cruiser have in common? Sure, they both taste terrible, and you never want to be seen in public with one. Most importantly though, they're a depreciating asset. But hey, that didn't stop old Gnarly Carly from sprucing her up any way he could. Wiring her bones back together with coat hangers, replacing her skin with wax and silk, making a wig out of that bag of hair from earlier, and soaking the body in massive amounts of perfume and disinfectants, for obvious reasons. He claimed to have been instructed to do all this by Elena's spirit, which he would apparently talk to frequently. He also did, you know, that thing eccentric loners do with dead ladies in their house, but we won't talk about that. This went on for 7 years, 7 hot and humid Florida years, until 1940 when Elena's sister saw him dancing with some lady through the curtains. She's like, "Aw, how cute. I'm glad that old bag of lentils has finally found love." Walks in, comes to find out, it's her fucking dead sister. So the cops come, but there isn't any conclusive evidence of any flirting and philandering with the body, so the only crime Karl could have been charged with was grave robbing. Except the statute of limitations was already up by the time he was found out, so they just took the body, tipped their hats, and went on their merry way. Tanzler still missed Elena dearly, but since he couldn't have her cadaver, he crafted a crude homemade effigy of the lady, which he lived with for the rest of his life. Here's the part that really gets me though. He apparently went back to live with his estranged wife once the jig was up. Just like, "Hey babe, I know we haven't talked since the whole corpse thing, but I've been having trouble making rent. Do you think I could come crash for a while?" "Sure, come right in. I'll take your coats. Would you and the demented life-size replica of your long-dead lover that you left me for like a cup of tea? I'd like one. None for her, though. It goes right through her. Of course, I'm making all this out to be a horrifying thing for the goofs and gaffs of it, but at the time, a lot of people read the news stories about Tanzler, and many actually sympathized with the man. They saw him as the distraught, hapless romantic that he saw himself as. You know why they had that compassion? Because they listened. Say, what would the world look like if we all listened more? Sponsor time! Listening to audiobooks inspires us, motivates us, even brings us closer, and there's no better place to listen than Audible. But what should you listen to, you ask? After all, there's so many options that it's almost overwhelming. Well, normally I tell you to go listen to my book, but unfortunately I've never written a book, so instead, how about the Necronomicon? That's right, the Necronomicon is on Audible. Now you too can learn exactly how to put that Pope blood in the backseat to use on your way to work. Tie in. In all seriousness, a novel really worth checking out is Edwin Abbott's Flatland, a book about life in an entirely two-dimensional universe, and it is a trip, trust me. You can get your first audiobook free along with 2 selected Audible original titles and exclusive fitness programs when you start your 30-day trial. Just visit audible.com/salmonella or text salmonella to 500 to get started. Again, go to audible.com/SAMONELLA or text SAMONELLA to try Audible for free. Link in the description. Anyway, that's all for today. Till next time, I'm Salmonella, and thank you for watching. Alright, after months upon months of unrelenting pressure by you psychopaths pretending to be my characters on Twitter, I finally got a merch store. Let this be a lesson, kids. With enough harassment, you can achieve anything. Anyway, go check it out, or don't, whatever. Hey kids, if I learned anything from my middle school career, it's that what may seem like a good idea initially will often be remembered only as a foolish mistake. Here's a few pieces of technology from yesteryear that have since fallen into total obscurity. So I've always believed that there's no point in having many small things when you can have one big thing. Why have many shrimp when you can have one lobster? Why drink many glasses of milk when you can eat one udder? Why have many cheese-its when you can have one cheese-them? Patent pending. And why have many street lights when you can have one moonlight tower? These guys were real popular back in the 1880s and 90s, often standing at over 150 feet tall and illuminating several blocks from a single point. Not very well, mind you. Matter of fact, they were so dim, we didn't even have the conscience to just call them light towers. Had to go and stick the moon on the front so people didn't get their hopes up. But thanks to our good old friend, the inverse square law, you still needed a fuck ton of light to pull this off. So they used incredibly harsh and UV emitting arc lights instead of incandescent bulbs. All the light of the moon and all the vision damage of the sun? Talk about a win-win. Sadly, these beasts have fallen by the wayside over the past century or so, except for in Austin, apparently, but they use friendlier mercury vapor lamps in them, so they only get half points. Now, anyone who's been around a baby long enough knows they always have a cloud of ghoulish stench hovering around them. Jeez Louise, somebody better air out that musty little muskrat before Grandma starts drooping again. You could stick him on the clothesline for a while, but knowing that little moron, I'm sure he'd find a way to hurt himself somehow. Introducing the baby cage. Finally, city dwellers all across the nation have a way of unleashing their postnatal funk on the unsuspecting passerby below. These were in vogue for a while before falling out of style a bit of the way into the 20th century, because apparently society started deeming babies more valuable than air conditioners. I don't really get it personally, but this is also around the time we started putting lead in gasoline, so it's probably for the best we kept them inside all day. Matter of fact, it's my firm belief that without kids growing up breathing lead, there's no way pet rocks would have taken off in the 70s. Wow, alienating baby boomers. He's so brave and controversial. Now, in the days between the Great War and the not as great but still pretty alright war, people were trying to find efficient means of detecting an incoming air attack. They climbed their nation's tallest mountains to seek the wisdom of their greatest elders, and the wise men said, big ears. So that's what they did. These giant discs were known as acoustic mirrors and were designed to focus incoming sound over a 5-meter diameter into a single point. They were reasonably effective as listening devices. A few of them in Britain were able to pick up the sound of a plane from all the way across the English Channel. Of course, radar came along soon after, rendering these things completely useless beyond looking brutalist as hell. For real, instant album cover material right here. Ah! One of the Pep Boys is pulling a Spanish Inquisition on this poor wayward harlot. Huh. Just kidding. Despite the fact that this looks so very much like a state-of-the-art instrument of torture, it's actually just a beauty micrometer. Think those shoe size measurer things at Foot Locker, only instead of one primitive measurement, it records the entire topology of your face and skull at once. With this data, a trained cosmetologist would be able to pinpoint exactly what features of your head should be enhanced and reduced with makeup in order to achieve a maximum calculated attractiveness after you've paid for their services. Clearly this device must have been effective. After all, beauty is entirely objective. What, eye of the beholder? Huh. Check the name tag, buddy. Apparently though, women didn't like being strapped into a birdcage and having their every minute flaw meticulously laid out in front of them, so this thing never really took off in the end. Next we have the Humlauf. This was a device made during World War II designed to let infantry shoot around corners. It's like the Germans sat down and watched that part in Tom and Jerry where the conniving rat bends the gun barrel back at his adversary. They said, "Mein Gott." They came in a variety of angles between 30 and 90 degrees, and even came with a little periscope so you could see what you were shooting at. But as we all come to find out when we reach adolescence, cartoons are the arbiters of deceit, because these things would invariably break within the first couple hundred shots or so. And even when they did work, the rounds would fucking explode from the massive acceleration, turning a deadly bullet into an ineffectual spray of shrapnel. These were so ineffective that only the 30-degree model ever saw significant production beyond prototypes, and even that was very limited. Say, you ever look at regular mousetraps and go, not enough property damage? Well, check this out. Patented in 1882, it's the revolver mousetrap, brought to you by the makers of the snail trebuchet and the cockroach claymore. Thanks to the marvels of the modern era, all those tiresome hours of intense varmint slang can be outsourced to one little gadget on the floor of your kid's playroom. Now when you hear a gunshot in the middle of the night, you can rest easy knowing that, one way or the other, there's one less pest for you to deal with in the morning. Boom. 1850. Steam locomotives are all the rage. You're in the transport business, but all you can afford is a couple dumb horses. Sure, they move things from point A to point B almost as well at a fraction of the cost, but your cool rail-riding friends called you a whack-ass and it really hurt your feelers. Well, have we got the invention for you? The Impulsoria uses an ingenious system of treadmills to turn that horse to be beckoned into a force to be reckoned with. Sure, it's expensive as hell to make and limits your services entirely to railroads, but just look at it. Instant Pussymobile. Slap some rims and a spoiler on that, you're laughing. This machine is recorded at having a maximum output of 2 to 4 horsepower, which sounds about right, and it didn't see much use outside a couple exhibitions. Now, if there's one hobby that people in the past enjoyed, it's smoking. Whoo boy did they like smoking. And with every great wholesome activity comes a million novelty items to go along with it. Everyone's seen the long cigarette, but how about the really long cigarette? Want to smoke in the rain? Here you go. Going snorkeling? Hey, you know what's more important than oxygen? Nicotine. But hey, wanna know the only thing better than a cigarette? 2 cigarettes. You know what? Fuck it. Have the whole pack. You earned it. Of course, if you're trying to cut back, you can always share it with a friend. Aw, how heartburning. But you know what's even more fun than addiction? High quality documentaries. That's why you should check out CuriosityStream. From the face behind the Discovery Channel, CuriosityStream lets you stuff your little meatuses full of all the bizarre knowledge the world has to offer. And with over 2,400 titles, there's no way there isn't something that interests you here. Remember Secret Life of Pets? Trash movie. Turgid prose, stilted dialogue, pandering humor, and above all, highly unrealistic. On the other hand, The Secret Life of Dogs is an absolute treasure. Did you know they turn their tongues into weird inside-out ladles when they drink? Just one of the many fun facts found inside. Normally, full access to CuriosityStream only costs $2.99 a month or $20 a year, which is nothing. That's like a McDonald's run every 4 months. But if you still have your doubts, you can get 30 days free if you sign up at curiositystream.com/salmonella and use promo code salmonella during the sign-up process. Anyway, that's all for today. Till next time, I'm Salmonella, and check out this JPEG. This video is sponsored by Skillshare. Hey kids, John Wilkes Booth, Lee Harvey Oswald, Hitler, all people who gained massive notoriety by killing one of history's famous leaders. But there are 2 Americans who committed an equally heinous crime as these 3, yet their stories are seldom remembered, mostly because nobody really cares about the presidents they killed. Originally I was going to talk about both of them, but the video ended up being way too long, so today we'll just stick to, this one I guess. Charles J. Guiteau was a pretty silly guy, and to understand how a guy could be so silly, you gotta start with his youth. youth. Guiteau was born in Freeport, Illinois in 1841. His mom had postpartum psychosis and died when he was 7, alongside 3 of his 5 siblings. His dad, meanwhile, was mega religious and made a big point out of instilling those values in his son, often physically. This influence molded Charles into a boy who sought nothing short of total approval from others, and who would react very harshly to any criticism levied upon him. As a teen, he moved to Ann Arbor, Michigan for high school. He tried to get into the University of Michigan, but he goofed on the entrance exam. So he did what anyone in his situation would do and said, well, so much for real life. I'm gonna join a commune. Specifically, he became part of the Oneida community in New York. In some aspects, this place was a pretty run-of-the-mill religious fellowship. From each according to their ability, to each according to their need, yada yada. But there were a couple of things that made it special. First off, they followed a doctrine known as Christian perfectionism, whereby everyone would strive to live their lives completely free of sin and reach a divine level of perfection while still on earth. Now, this isn't really unique to Oneida, but whereas most people would achieve this through staunch discipline and careful self-reflection, these guys would just get together and take turns roasting the shit out of each and every member over any minute flaw they could possibly have. Real great for the psyche. They also practiced what was basically an early form of eugenics, where aspiring parents would have to submit an application and be judged by the committee on their moral and spiritual fortitude. If they were allowed to mate, children would be separated from the mom about a year after birth and raised communally in the children's wing. After all, wouldn't want any of those hopelessly flawed toddlers to think they're deserving of any affection whatsoever. Oneida also believed in what they called free love, which meant that anyone could bang anyone at any time, as long as they kept it hetero, and exclusive relationships of any kind were actually frowned upon, which seems like kind of a weird habit for people trying to 100% FC this whole Christianity thing, but whatever. But wait, you're saying, how can you have selective breeding at the same time as extremely unselective breeding? Aha! See, that's where male continence comes in. Under this rule, a pair could go at it for as long as they wanted, with the caveat that the dude's not allowed to nut, pull out or otherwise. That way, it's not a sin. After all, as the Bible says, if the dick don't spit, you must acquit. Paradoxically, no such rule existed for the women. In fact, not only did the commune believe in female orgasms, they actually prioritized them, which is like unheard of in the 19th century. They'd even have the middle-aged women of the society train the teen boys in the art of holding in the old pelvic sneeze. That way, there wouldn't be any chance of conception in case the guy goofs up his first few tries. So anyway, young Guiteau joins this whole thing, and endured countless blows to his massive yet fragile ego, thinking he's at least gonna get a piece of this communal action. Except, the criticism towards him wasn't just a formality like it was for others. Everyone there genuinely fucking hated him, on account of the fact that he was a raving neurotic narcissist. He never caught a single piece of this allegedly free love, and after a while, they all started calling him Charles Get Out in the hopes that he'd leave. This is real. And after 5 long years of this abuse, Guiteau finally got the hint and moved to New Jersey. He tried starting a newspaper themed around the Oneida religion called the Daily Theocrat, except nobody cared, so that failed. He went back to Oneida and tried to sue the place in order to get back pay for all his voluntary unpaid labor while living there, but apparently I'm mad butthurt isn't a valid reason for prosecution, so that went nowhere. Finally he said, well, when your devotion to God has failed you, there's only one path in life left. Time to become a lawyer. He managed to pass an examination to gain admission to the Illinois bar, and subsequently joined a law firm in Chicago at the age of 27, where he met his soon-to-be wife, one Annie Bunn. Of course, Guiteau never really got to be a lawyer. He only argued in one actual court case. Most of his time was spent doing bill collection for random clients. This job gave him insight into how debtors think and operate, which allowed him to turn into quite the con man, dodging bills whenever and wherever he saw the opportunity. Even on the job, he'd frequently charge exorbitant contingency fees after the fact, upwards of 75%. And sometimes he'd just keep it all and completely ghost his clients. After all, what are they gonna do? Send another bill collector? Well, it turns out they did, so Guiteau and his wife fled to New York. Here he ditched law and started getting into politics. Specifically, he wrote and delivered a speech in favor of Horace Greeley, the 1872 Democratic presidential candidate. And he somehow got it in his head that if Greeley won, his campaign would be so greatly indebted to him that they'd fulfill his desires to be the Minister of Chile, as though a total rando like him could just, name a job and it would be his. In In reality, the speech was an incoherent mess heard by next to no one, and Greeley lost by a landslide. As the years passed, Annie got real sick of living life on the run with a broke-ass bitch, and Charles was none too keen on her weighing him down either. But back in the day, you couldn't just divorce someone willy-nilly, you needed a valid reason for it. So Charles concocted the brilliant scheme of banging a prostitute and then having her testify in court. The plan worked, with the pair successfully divorcing in 1874, and the only downside was syphilis. Whoops. Guiteau started dabbling in theology again around this time. He published a book called The Truth, which was almost entirely plagiarized directly from John Noyes, the founder of the Oneida Community. But despite being a man of God, Guiteau was still very much a two-time varmint, and moved frequently in the dead of night to keep collectors off his tail. His brother caught wind of this and wrote him a letter basically saying, hey, maybe you should pay your bills now and then so you can be, a functioning member of society. To which Charles replied, and I quote, "Find $7 enclosed. Stick it up your bunghole and wipe your nose on it, and that will remind you of the estimation in which you are held by Charles J. Guiteau." God damn. And to his own brother, the madman. Soon after, he got arrested, bailed out by his sister, lived with her for a few months, attacked her with an axe, went to DC, rambled about religion to anyone who would listen, moved to Boston, got in a boat accident where everyone in his boat was fine, but everyone in the other one fucking died, took this as a sign from God, moved back to New York, and got back into politics in 1880, this time as a Republican. During this campaign, there were two main factions of Republicans, known as the Stalwarts and the Half-Breeds, which sounds like some Tolkien shit, wish we had names like that today. Now, Guiteau considered himself a stalwart, and in a similar vein to his 1872 venture, he wrote a speech to promote stalwart candidate Ulysses S. Grant, who was shooting for his third term. But before he got a chance to deliver the speech, one James A. Garfield took the candidacy completely out of nowhere, beating out both factions single-handedly. He was like, rats, how am I gonna get power handed to me now? So he literally just scribbled out all the references to Grant and replaced them with Garfield and was like, yep, that'll do it. He read this speech all of twice, along with handing out copies to the Republican National Committee. In reality, this really didn't accomplish much, but when Garfield managed to win the election, Guiteau was like, yes! That was entirely me! Garfield is in my supreme debt. As God is my witness, he shall make me a consulate in Vienna or Paris or someplace cool like that. He went to DC to await his inevitable appointment, but obviously nothing happened. So he started writing letters. A lot of letters. When that didn't work, he started actually stalking both Garfield and the Secretary of State, James Blaine, intercepting them in hotel lobbies, just being like, oh hey, yeah, it's me, the sole person responsible for your success. Say, how about a consulship? Alright, you'll get back to me, I get it. Whoa, haha, what a coincidence. Me again. How's that consulship coming? At first they simply ignored him, but eventually Blaine snapped, screaming, never speak to me again on the Paris consulship as long as you live. Damn you, Garfield! I sense a disturbance in the force. Maybe daylight savings just made Monday an hour longer. Wow, Garfield, that was quite the wisecrack. It's amazing how you managed to keep things fresh year after year. Burn in hell, beige dog. At this point, Guiteau completely renounced any faith in the current administration, and after a lifetime of clout chasing met only with disappointment, he decided his only option was straight up going postal. He convinced himself that it was now God's will to remove Garfield from this mortal plane in order to put his stalwart vice president, Chester Alan Arthur, into power. When he went to buy a revolver, he was given the choice between a wood grip and an ivory grip. He went with the ivory one for no other reason than he thought it would look cooler in a museum, and on July 2nd, 1881, he ambushed Garfield at the Baltimore and Potomac Railroad Station, shooting him twice in the back and mortally wounding him, all because he wouldn't give him a job. Garfield managed to hang on for 11 weeks before finally dying, which sounds like hell. Today's modern physicians actually believe that Garfield could have easily survived the incident if it weren't for doctors digging through him with unsanitized tools. Hey modern medicine, thanks for not being worse than literally no medicine. It means a lot. But that didn't stop Guiteau from being formally charged with murder. And that's exactly what he wanted. Matter of fact, Guiteau was over the moon, taking his new nationwide infamy as the fame he always deserved. His trial was just bananas, with Guiteau hurling obscenities at just about everyone there, including his own defense team, and formatting his testimony as an epic poem which he recited in full. He even dictated an autobiography to the New York Herald, which, get this, he ended with a personal ad for a nice Christian lady under 30 years of age. What a baller. When the guilty verdict was read, he called everybody there low consummate jackasses. And on June 30th, 1882, Guiteau smiled and waved to his adoring fans as he was walked to the gallows, where he recited a repetitive, deranged poem he wrote that morning, which was performed in a high-pitched falsetto voice, since it was written in the point of view of a child. He asked for a full orchestra to play during the reading, which I don't have to tell you that went nowhere, and promptly thereafter, he was hung. When the gallows dropped, people were probably like, ugh, Jesus, it's finally over. I just came here for a nice little execution. They subject me to all that? I want my money back, frankly. So it just goes to show, you can't always get what you want. Unless that thing is getting everyone to hate you, that's extraordinarily easy. But for everything else, you're gonna need a combination of hard work and know-how. While the former must ultimately come from within, there's plenty of resources out there for the latter, the best of which is a seldom talked about little startup called Skillshare. Sponsor time. Skillshare is an online learning community with over 25,000 classes in design, business, technology, and more. Premium membership gives you unlimited access to high-quality classes on must-know topics, so you can improve your skills, unlock new opportunities, and do the work you love. A wise philosopher once said that the most fulfilling pursuit in life is to get to know oneself. Nah, I just made that up. Sounds legit though, right? Now, mindfulness and meditation are all well and good, but how about drawing as self-discovery? Sounds hokey, but I can tell you that I've certainly learned a lot about myself over the years doing this thing, so I'm sure you will too. Join the more than 7 million people already learning on Skillshare today with a special offer just for my viewers. Everyone who visits the link in the description can get 2 months of unlimited access to the 25,000 plus classes on Skillshare for absolutely free. So please, release that tension and get that comprehension today. Anyway, that's all for today. Till next time, I'm Sam and Nella, and Ayoop and Ayoop.
Hey kids, let me talk to you about dog breeding. Nowadays, dogs are mostly around just to be a cute companion, right? So breeding has gone from functionality to cuteness. And that's fine, as long as it stays within the bounds of nature. But that's not enough for today's breeder. So, how do you make a dog cuter? Apparently, by giving it disgusting genetic deformities. And chances are, you, the listener, agree with that. You just don't know you do. Let me show you what I mean. See this? This is a relatively normal dog. Notice the snout, the eyes, the shape of the head. Not too far gone from the wolves that today's dogs come from. Now let me take you through some other breeds. First is the Bull Terrier. 100 years ago, still looked pretty normal, right? Now here's today's version. Jesus! Who needs snouts, right? Let's just give it a long, continuous boomerang-shaped head with 2 tiny holes at the end. Seriously, it looks like Toucan Sam is trying to fit inside a dog costume. And look at its eyes! They're permanently pointed up at the sky as if to say, God, why did you let me become this? Please kill me. Do you guys remember Spuds MacKenzie, the old Bud Light mascot? Well, I just realized why they chose a Bull Terrier of all dogs. It's because he looked like his mom drank nothing but Bud Light for her entire pregnancy. Next up is the Pug. I'll probably get some hate for this one, but I don't care. They've been bred specifically to look like they've been smashed in the goddamn face with a frying pan. And because of this, because of the fact that their skull is shaped like a fucking tuna can, they can barely breathe their whole lives. Ever been around a pug? Constantly, no matter the temperature or the weather, they sit there going, gah, 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 gah. And people think this shit is cute. If my baby came out with a flat nose, hair lip, cylindrical head, and no neck going gah, 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 I'd be like, Jesus fuck, put it back in. It's clearly not done yet. Next is the Dachshund. Now there is no excuse for this one. The head's fine, right? But the body, good God. It's got a torso shaped like a goddamn doorstop with those pointless legs just kind of stapled on. Now it's been a little while since I reminded you what a normal dog looks like, so here. Now let me go into Photoshop real quick and do all the changes necessary to make this dog look like a dachshund. Look at that. That's not okay. Why even have legs at this point? Might as well just keep going until it's just a drumstick from the neck down. And there's no reason. It's just one day someone was like, well, people like dogs and people like ferrets, so why don't we make some chimera abomination halfway in between the two and see what happens. My least favorite breed though, out of all of them, it's just straight up fucked in every way. A testament to humankind's never-ending corruption of the natural world. I'm talking about the Chihuahua. It's like somebody took a normal dog and boiled away every aspect except for anger and neuroticism, leaving this tiny hell creature behind. And this is one of the nicer pictures I could find. Take a look at this. Someone call a priest. And we let these things inhabit our homes. This poor woman's gonna wake up with her fucking nose chewed off and just be like, oh, Mr. Wiggles was a little hungry this morning, wasn't he? Meanwhile, the dog's just sitting there like, bloodlust. The only time they're not being needlessly aggressive towards people, it's when they're off pissing, shitting, and vomiting all over their surroundings. And you would think such a small dog would at least produce manageable waste, but much like the creature itself, the small things it does expel are straight up toxic. It's like some of the Chihuahua's pent-up hatred for the mortal plane manifests itself in every dump it takes. I would rather clean up a full-grown man's shit from my floor than wipe up the septic nightmare that is Chihuahua squirts. The only good thing about owning a Chihuahua is that if it ever gets rabies, it'll be fine, because you won't be able to tell the goddamn difference. It'll still be sitting there, business as usual. So that's my little rant about the monstrosities that live right beneath our noses. I'm Sam and Nella, and thank you for watching.
Hey kids, I think we can all agree that there are few pastimes more grotesque than competitive eating. The concept of a bunch of guys pushing their anatomy to its limits just for sport leaves a bad taste in my mouth in more ways than one. But imagine if these men didn't adopt this habit just for fun. Imagine if some gross biological error forced them to eat like this for their entire life. Introducing Tarare. Tarare was born in France around 1772 to a poor farming family. It's said that his appetite was so voracious that, by his teens, Tarare could eat an entire quarter of a cow carcass in a single day. You'd think he'd be like mega obese, but no, he only weighed 100 pounds by age 17. However, there were still a few things that stood out about Tarare appearance-wise. For one, he had a huge, stretched-out mouth with horribly stained teeth. He could reportedly fit 12 eggs in his cheeks at once, much like a chipmunk keeping its chipmunk eggs warm. Additionally, when Tarare was full, he'd get a crazy octomom gut going, and any other time, he'd have a huge flap of stretched out skin hanging around his waist. He also stank to high hell, even by 18th century French peasant standards. He was described as reeking, quote, to such a degree that he could not be endured within the distance of 20 paces. So between all this and his horrendous outhouse flooding dumps, his family had had enough. Alright, you're eating us out of house and home here. You gotta go, man. You heard me. Kick bricks, Froggy. Wow, he just called a French person a frog. That's so racist. No, it's not. They're all French. The guy just looks like a frog is all. Oh. Well, too late. I'm already offended. That's fair. Dislike. After leaving home, Tarare was forced to beg and steal just to satisfy his gargantuan appetite. Inevitably, people began to take notice of him, and eventually he landed a job as a street performer in Paris. People would hand Tarare entire baskets of apples, eggs, and even wine corks, and watch in delight as he horked them down without the slightest hesitation. Normally, this went off without a hitch, except for one time when he suffered a severe intestinal blockage. Fortunately, the crowd was kind enough to carry him to the hospital, where he was treated with the strongest laxatives the 18th century had to offer. I would draw what happened next, but it would probably get my channel deleted, so let's just picture it for a few moments. Moving on. Cut to the year 1792. This marks the beginning of the War of the First Coalition. Ever heard of it? Me neither. Who was in it? Fucking everyone. Anyway, Tarare decided to enlist in the war. After all, maybe that profound emptiness he was feeling was just a lack of purpose in life. Turns out, no, he really was just psychotically hungry. Even after being granted quadruple rations, Tarare would still be digging through the trash pile whenever he got the chance. After suffering extreme exhaustion, he was sent off to the military hospital in Souterrain. The staff there was so dumbfounded by the man's abilities that they decided to keep him there to run a few experiments. The first of which involved putting Tarare in a room with a meal prepared for 15 people. Naturally, he ate the entire thing and immediately fell asleep. Next, they presented him with a raw eel. In response, Tarare crushed the eel's skull between his teeth before slurping down the entire creature in one go. Now, this is hair-clenchingly horrifying for a couple of reasons. Firstly, he put a whole frickin' eel in his stomach, but secondly, there had to be some point during digestion where the meat was gone but the bones still remained. Now, for those of you who don't know, an eel skeleton looks like this. That means Tarare had all of those needle-sized ribs stabbing into the walls of his stomach at once, and he was fine. He also ripped a live cat apart with his bare hands, drank its blood, and ate everything but its bones, and then later gagged up the fur and skin like an owl, but, you know, that's neither here nor there. After reviewing our data, I've come to the scientific conclusion that, yeah, we got a goddamn demon on our hands. But as we all know, with great devour comes great responsibility. Since Terrare was still technically enlisted, the military decided to utilize his abilities for the greater good. Hey Terrare, it's me, the General. Listen, could you eat this box with a note in it for me? If you do it, we'll give you a wheelbarrow full of bull organs. Lo and behold, 2 days later, he passed the container in mint condition and was given his reward as promised. With this proof of concept, they made him an official spy and sent him into Prussia with a document in his belly, to be delivered to an imprisoned French colonel. Unfortunately, there are a couple things Terrare couldn't do that are generally important when sneaking into another country. A, he couldn't speak German, and B, it's pretty hard to maintain a low profile when you're running around like a madman wolfing down garbage and mutilating small animals. So he ended up being captured by the enemy. Initially, he kept his mouth shut, for once, but after a whipping and a day in jail, Terrare gave in. After confessing that he did, in fact, have vital intelligence snaking its way through his GI tract, the Prussians chained him to a latrine until the box emerged 30 hours later. The note wasn't actually anything important, so they just mock executed him, gave him a severe beating, and sent him on his way. After all that, Terrare returned to life at the hospital, desperate for a cure for his condition, but nothing they ever tried worked. Meanwhile, the man's endless hunger continued to get him into all sorts of trouble. He'd often sneak out of the hospital to eat the scraps behind the local butcher and fight stray dogs in the alley for their precious garbage. He'd also seek out patients undergoing bloodletting in order to take all their life juice for himself. On several occasions, he was even caught attempting to eat bodies in the mortuary. By this point in my research, I was so desensitized to this guy that I didn't even bat an eye when I first read that. I was just like, alright. Guess he must have been hungry. Anyway, the hospital staff begrudgingly tolerated Terrare's buffoonery, until one day when he went too far. Well, Terrare, you've only had 3 mess hall raids, 4 miscellaneous trash-related mishaps, and 1 cadaver defiling, so I'd say, so far, this week's been pretty good. Doctor, we should probably inform you that a 14-month-old child has gone missing from their room. Terrare, look at me. Did you eat a fucking baby? Terrare was promptly kicked out of the hospital and spent 4 years out and about doing, whatever horrific shit you can imagine. When he came back, he was suffering from advanced tuberculosis and died shortly after arrival. During his autopsy, the surgeons found that, when they looked into his mouth, they could see all the way down his throat and into his stomach cavity. As you can imagine, his whole abdominal region was profoundly deformed. Basically, if this is a normal human, this is what they found inside Terrare. Just like the man's mind, we can see that around 90% is devoted towards food and 10% towards everything else. So, moral of the story here is that, no, you know what, not even I can find anything resembling a moral here. Not all stories have a point to them. Sometimes they're just sad and disgusting from beginning to end. And now a word from our sponsor. As you can probably tell, I'm a very visual person when it comes to learning. I firmly believe that engaging visuals are an essential teaching tool that allows for much deeper comprehension than plain old walls of text. That's why I'm pleased to introduce our sponsor, Brilliant.org. We all know that math and science are really important to master, and Brilliant's elegant UI and step-by-step design makes learning seemingly complex topics very intuitive, especially for visual learners. Their straightforward graphics, delightful animations, and interactive puzzles make it easy and fun to hone your own critical thinking skills. Personally, I've always been super intrigued by neural networks and all the things you can do with them, but I've always been too intimidated to research them in depth. After learning about Brilliant, I actually started taking their course in the subject, and I gotta say, it's been such a pleasurable experience that I plan to continue with it in my own spare time. To support me and learn more about Brilliant, go to brilliant.org/salmonella and sign up for free. Also, the first 200 people that go to that link will get 20% off the annual premium subscription. Till next time, I'm Salmonella, and thank you for watching.
Hey, little Jimmy.
Yeah, what's up?
Do you like Pirates of the Caribbean?
Yeah, it's alright.
So do you think it'd be fun to be a pirate?
Yeah?
Well, guess what? You couldn't be more wrong.
Oh, fuck.
Yeah, I know. At some point, every kid has dreamed about being a swashbuckling, corn-shuckling, wife-cuckling, cocksuckling pirate, but trust me when I say, it was really not all it's cracked up to be. First, we'll talk about the food. So one staple of the pirate diet was salted meat, usually wild oxen or pork. And I love jerky as much as the next guy, but this wasn't wasn't like a bag of Jack Links. In fact, it was probably closer in texture to your shoes than any meat you've ever eaten. In those days, you couldn't just snap into a Slim Jim. That's a modern luxury that we take for granted. Back then, the slogan was, gnaw on a Slim Jim for minutes on end, grinding it between your molars while the gallons of salt turn your mouth into a desert until the mangled hunk of flesh in your mouth is just soft enough to be shoved down your greasy fucking pirate throat without tearing a hole. Another essential food item was known as hardtack. This was essentially just flour and water baked into a cracker-like brick. Beyond the fact that it was totally flavorless, hardtack was also extremely dense, to the point where pirates would often have to slam their fists down on it in order to break it into pieces small enough to fit in their mouth. As long as it was kept dry, hardtack almost never spoiled, although it often became infested with weevils. Excuse me, sir? I'm a vegan, so can I have a new piece? One without any of Mother Nature's beautiful creatures in it? Thanks. Wait a minute, is this gluten-free? This better be hemp rope! Nah, but the weevils didn't make you sick or change the taste all that much, so, and this is true, the crew would just eat it in the dark, so that way they couldn't tell if they were eating a normal chunk or a weevily one. Then there's the crowding. So pirate ships typically packed in as many crew members as possible, because more pirates means more manpower when you go to board an enemy ship. Of course, the downside to that is that you're basically like a bunch of hairy, unwashed sardines. Let me illustrate what a typical night below deck was like. So you're sprawled out on the damp, musty wood floor. Everything's pitch black, you can't see a thing. The smell of the filth and the mold forces you to only breathe through your mouth. Suddenly, your left hand feels wet. Probably just seawater leaking through the hull. You sniff your hand. Nope. No, that's piss. You feel something furry rub up against your elbow. It was either the body of a diseased rat or the beard of your diseased crewmate. Either way, that's probably where the piss came from. Some guy's moaning loudly in the next room. Hopefully he's just jerking off, because if he's dying, that's one more body to deal with in the morning. Rinse and repeat for 8 hours, and then it's daytime. The poor diet and cramped conditions led to disease being a huge problem aboard pirate ships. The most well-known of these diseases is scurvy, where you don't get enough vitamin C. When scurvy first begins, you just kind of feel tired all the time, no big deal. Then you get weird spots on your skin and your gums start bleeding. This progresses until all your teeth fall out and all of your body's mucous membranes start gushing blood and pus, causing you to die. So that's a lot of fun. There were tons of other diseases too, I won't go through them all, but here's a few honorable mentions. Also, some people say that alcoholism is a disease. I might just be disturbed, but that's one sickness I could definitely get down with. If it is a disease, then yeah, just about every pirate had this one. If anything though, I'd call that one of the few upsides of pirate life. Finally, there's the combat. So you've gone through all these disgusting, horrible living conditions, but at least you can enjoy the thrill of battle, right? Swinging from rope to rope, sword in your mouth, long, intense saber duels, that kind of thing. But that's typically not how it went down. For one thing, when pirates boarded a ship, 9 times out of 10, they'd just surrender immediately. Because what are a bunch of well-groomed merchants gonna do against a horde of disgusting barbarians? If the defending ship did decide to fight back though, the resulting brawl wouldn't be anything like the movies. It'd be way worse, like immediate R rating. Because pirates rely a lot on brutality, both because they don't have much real training, and because it scares the shit out of people. If you were a deckhand on an invaded ship and you were stupid enough to fight back, you wouldn't be dancing around doing flips and shit. None of that. Instead, they'd probably shoot you in the stomach with a flintlock pistol, kick you to the ground, chop off your shoulder blade with a hand axe, gouge out your eyes with a marlin spike, wind your intestines around the prow, and then toss your twitching body overboard. And that's only a slight exaggeration. Honestly, if Jack Sparrow got attacked by actual pirates, he wouldn't last a second. It's kinda like a used car salesman going to prison, like, I'll be fine. If anybody tries intimidating me, I can get out of it with my quick wit and charming personality. Boy, you look real pretty from behind. Oh wow, I'm boned. So yeah, in short, if you were thinking about pulling a Captain Phillips anytime soon, I'd advise against it. That's all for today. Till next time, I'm Sam and Nella, and thank you for watching.
This episode of Sam and Nella Academy is brought to you by Skillshare. Hey kid. Yeah, you. I just got off the phone with the big man upstairs. and he told me that I need to clear a few things up around here. So without further ado, here's 10 pieces of malarkey that you might still be spreading. Number 1. Nobody was ever burned to death at the Salem witch trials. Of the accused, 15 died in prison, 19 were hanged, and 1 was squished to death. That last one is way more interesting than any cremation, by the way. Dude was a badass. His name was Giles Corey. He was 81 years old and so done with the town of Salem's garbage that he wouldn't even dignify the trial with a plea. So the town stuck him between 2 boards and stacked rocks on top of him in an effort to draw out a confession. But every time they tried to get something out of him, all he would say was, "More weight." This went on for 3 solid days until he finally died, never giving any indication as to whether or not he was a witch. One can only wonder. Number 2, the OG Buddha wasn't the obese guy. That's Budai, a Chinese folk character meant to represent Maitreya, aka future Buddha. Now this shirt is double sad. Number 3, Buddha wasn't a god either. He was just a guy named Gautama. Now this shirt is triple sad. Number 4. Ever heard of a vomitorium? Turns out, no. It's not a place where Roman nobles would go to make room for more pheasant spleen and lobster eyelids. It's just a big entranceway to the Colosseums that hordes of peasants would spew out of. Number 5. Washington never cut down a cherry tree in his youth. I don't get this one at all. Apparently it's supposed to paint the man in a good light somehow. It's like, Tyler, what the hell happened while we were gone? Where's the tree in the front yard? Oh yeah, that was me. Got bored. Just felt like vandalizing something, you know? Hey, what about my honest character? Number 6, the pyramids weren't actually built by slaves. These workers were respected members of society. They ate meat and worked in 3-month shifts, and even got to be buried right next to the tomb after their death. Matter of fact, that's more than we can say for the people working on man's greatest achievements today. If I spent years of my life helping to build the space station, you're damn right I'd want the Salmonella Memorial Corpse Receptacle floating along right next to it. That would be amazing. Number 7, the Great Wall of China is not the only man-made object visible from space. I don't know where you dipshits got this one from. First of all, there's no way you could see it with the unaided eye. The wall is like 30 meters thick at most, while the distance to outer space is generally recognized to be 100 kilometers up, known as the Kármán line. To give some perspective, that's like me holding up a standard-sized guitar pick from across the entire length of a football field and asking you what color it is. Also, there are plenty of man-made objects that are way bigger in terms of local surface area than the Great Wall, so even if it was visible, there's no way it would be the only one. Number 8, you might have heard this one before. You know, Hitler was a jerk and all, but hey, he made the Autobahn, so at least he was efficient. Actually, Hitler didn't create the Autobahn. It was already there. He just helped expand it into newer territory. In a similar vein, Mussolini didn't make the trains run on time, with most of Italy's infrastructure repairs happening before his rise to power in 1922, and even then they weren't nearly as punctual as he'd like you to believe. So unfortunately, you're gonna have to find something else to like about these fascists. Like Hitler's elegant way of speaking. Or the way Mussolini says spaghetti. Paschetti! Number 9, Iron Maidens weren't actual torture devices used in medieval times. Basically what happened is, some archaeologists in the 1800s saw an old metal coffin and some spikes, and said, yo, wouldn't it be wildin' if we put these things up in here, so that way if someone goes in it, they get poked in their bits? You are a sick man, Cornelius. I like it. Into the museum it goes. At least Iron Maiden was real. They were as real as it gets. Still are. And don't you forget it. Number 10, Einstein never failed math. He had mastered both integral and differential calculus by the age of 15. 99% chance this one was just made up to make glue eaters feel better about themselves. Well, congratulations, Dimitri. Looks like you failed pre-algebra for the 3rd time. Brady still can't graduate. Well, hey, that means I'm still on par with famous smart science man, so yeah, worship me. So it just goes to show that we've all got a lot to learn about the world around us. That's why you need to go to Skillshare. Skillshare is an online learning community with over 20,000 classes in technology, design, business, and more. Premium membership gives you unlimited access to high-quality classes on must-know topics so you can improve your skills, unlock new opportunities, and do the work you love. They've got great courses in graphic design and animation, which I've clearly already mastered. I mean, check this out. but I'm sure you could get a lot of use out of them. You can also learn plenty of more recreational skills, like how to solve a Rubik's Cube, or how to play chess really well. Join the millions of students already learning on Skillshare today, with a special offer just for my viewers, where you can get 2 months of Skillshare completely free. To sign up, go to skl.sh/samo. Again, go to skl.sh/samo. to get 2 months of unlimited access to over 20,000 classes for free. Act now for this special offer and start learning today. Anyway, till next time, I'm Sam and Nella, and thank you for watching. Hey kids, you've probably seen this scene in TV or movies at some point. A couple of people end up stranded on a desert island, totally isolated from all civilization. It seems like there's no hope for survival, but then one of them looks 3 feet to the left and, oh my god, it's a tree full of fully grown, plump, delicious, smiling, golden-skinned bananas. Amazing. We're saved for the time being. Hey, don't eat those. They're made of lies. See? Listen, why do fruit exist? For a delicious, nutritious snack for humans and animals alike to enjoy? You know, you didn't have to go throwing him into the sun like that. You're next, Susan! How did you know my name? I created you. Anyway, as most of you probably know, fruit are a thing because nature figured out, hey, if you put a little bit of deliciousness around your seed, it'll convince some idiot bird or something to carry your baby off to faraway lands, right? But then humans showed up and were like, hey, that's pretty nifty. Listen, is it cool if we selectively breed you for thousands of years to give you horrific deformities to crank up that whole deliciousness part a couple hundred notches? Alright, cool. Let's take a look at bananas, specifically the Cavendish variety that we all know and love. On the inside, we got like 2% seeds, 93% delectable banana meat, and 5% that brown part at the bottom that your mom says is perfectly fine to eat but you still don't trust. Great for a snack. Terrible for reproducing efficiently. Meanwhile, check out the thing on the right here. That's Musa acuminata, one of the suspected ancestors of today's nanners. Much smaller and jam-packed with seeds, with just enough flesh in there to make it worth some smelly primate's time to crack open a yellow one with the boys. Here's another wild type banana, Musa balbesiana. Less sweet, way starchier, harder to get into, hella seeds, same shit different day really. But hey, if you stick that boy in the ground, you've got an okay chance of making a new banana tree. You bury a modern banana, all you're gonna end up with is a dirty banana. And not that one club in Miami, I mean an actual dirty banana. That's because, like a lot of cultivated fruit, culinary bananas are so inbred and malformed that they can't produce offspring even if they wanted to. So, word of advice for you men out there, if ever a lady points out how poorly endowed you are, just show her this JPEG. She'll say, wow, I didn't realize it was so potent and fertile. You really opened my eyes, thank you. Bananas aren't the only piece of produce to follow this pattern though, not by a long shot. For example, take the watermelon. According to Monsanto, everybody's favorite corporation, the first evidence of human cultivation of the watermelon dates back to Egypt around 5,000 years ago. Back then, they were only 2 inches in diameter, around the size of a tennis ball. The flesh was supposedly tough and bitter, much like that of a tennis ball. Of course, just as the growth of a delicious green baby takes time, so too did the evolution of the modern watermelon. In fact, even as late as the mid-1600s, watermelons looked way different from what we have today, as shown by this painting by Giovanni Stanchi. Notice the thicker rind, the larger seeds, and the weird segmentation on the inside. Definitely a cooler still life subject, but ultimately inferior as a summertime snack. How about vegetables? Tell me, do you enjoy cabbage, Brussels sprouts, kale, collard greens, broccoli, or cauliflower? I mean, I guess I like broccoli and cauliflower. The rest are kind of gross though. Wrong! All 6 of these vegetables are actually the same thing. That means you like them all. That's not how that works. I'll be good. Anyway, these veggies are all just cultivars of the same species, Brassica oleracea, otherwise known as wild cabbage. Every part of the plant is edible to some extent, but there's not much of it to go around. So a bunch of different people throughout history said, alright, what if we just take one specific part of the plant and go fucking insane with it? And that's what they did. Those who bred for giant leaves got kale, going for huge dense flower buds gets you broccoli, juicy engorged lateral leaf buds equal Brussels sprouts, etc. Speaking of segues, let's check out eggplant eggplants. The OG eggplant was first domesticated in India, where it can still be found in the wild today. It looks nothing like an eggplant though, they actually resemble little green berries the size of grapes. The only thing it seems to have in common with the classic purple eggplant is how little both of them have in common with an egg. However, if we add the RGB percentage values of their color and merge their shapes, we do get what looks approximately like an egg, so I guess that solves that mystery. This whole transformation really is a testament to man's greatness though. That's like starting out with a frog and selectively breeding them until you end up with Grimace from McDonald's lore. Speaking of which, did you know Grimace used to be evil and have 4 arms? This is a real thing. I'd like to think that when they lopped off his extra limbs, all his evil energy went with him, and now there's just 2 plump purple cylinders scampering around the countryside waiting to pull unsuspecting kids under ball pits, never to be seen again. That's just my McDonald's headcanon though. Anyway, back to whatever we were talking about. Next is corn, or sorry, maize. I call it corn like a normal person. If it was supposed to be called maize, these would be called mazes. Obviously, that's like the perfect opportunity, but they're not, so put an etymological sock in it. Or stocking. Anyway, I was totally expecting old corn to look like those baby corns you find in Chinese food and literally nowhere else. Turns out those actually are just baby corns. One suspected ancestor of corn is known as teosinte, which looks like this. Gee whiz, Sam, that sure does look like garbage. Good eye, Billy. That's because it was garbage. Whereas modern corn has a kernel count in the hundreds, teosinte only has 5 to 12, with each one being encased in a hard shell that's basically impossible to get into short of boiling it or chipping a tooth. The fact that people decided to domesticate it in the first place makes sense once you realize that most grains are basically the same thing. But honestly, that just makes me wish people figured out how to turn a piece of wheat into a big chunk of whatever to gnaw on. This whole thing disappointed me so much that I actually moved it to the top of my list of reasons not to visit the Mayans if I ever get a time machine. Nonetheless, as you can see, human endeavor can accomplish amazing things. And just as a few thousand years of selective breeding can turn this into this, a few hours of learning a week can turn you into, you know, a more talented and interesting version of you. And what better way to do that than with Skillshare.com? Skillshare is an online learning community with over 22,000 classes in technology, design, business, and more. Premium membership gives you unlimited access to high-quality classes on must-know topics so you can improve your skills, unlock new opportunities, and do the work you love. They've got great courses in just about any creative pursuit you can think of. I used to be totally musically illiterate till I took this course. Then I made this. What about food? You like food? Of course you do. You'd be dead if you didn't. With Skillshare, you can make your own macaroons, fresh pasta, spring rolls, whatever. Join the millions of students already learning on Skillshare today with a special offer just for my viewers, where you can get 2 months of Skillshare for free. To sign up, go to skl.sh/samo2. Again, for those in the back, go to skl.sh/samo2. to get 2 months of unlimited access to over 22,000 classes for free. Act now for this special offer and start learning today. Anyway, till next time, I'm Sam and Nella, and thank you for watching. Mentorship. What the